So my name's Sarah Fortuna. I am the Director of Operations of this very new organisation called Partnerships for Local Action and Community Empowerment. But fortunately, that is a very nifty acronym that shortens to PLACE. So we refer to ourselves as PLACE. I thought I am relatively new to this work, the world of place-based approaches. My background is more general, for-purpose social change primarily within the university sector. And this notion of place-based approaches, I was familiar with it, but I haven't really been steeped in this work. So I'm going to assume that, like me, others on the call and in the room at Moorabbin won't necessarily have a deep understanding of place-based approaches. So I'll speak very briefly to sort of what we mean by that. I would also just say, I did mean to say, I was really hoping to be in Moorabbin today, and I'm so sorry I can't be there. So, but Zoom is a wonder. So I'm very glad that I can participate today from home. So what are place-based approaches? They're a form of collaborative community-led work in a place. It's that simple. But essentially, the original thinking behind place-based approaches is that a lot of system change and a lot of attempts to sort of alleviate disadvantage, particularly across the country, and in fact this happens all over the world, was done at a sort of a national or maybe a state level. And a lot of people in local communities were saying, we have really specific challenges and opportunities in this local area, so having a one-size-fits-all model doesn't make sense. So what place-based approaches really tries to do is two things. One, really focus on the local area, drawing on local communities' knowledge of their area and its needs and opportunities. And two, collaborative solutions. So essentially it brings together local stakeholders, community members, government, service providers, other funders, particularly increasingly philanthropy, to really come together and look at complex problems and look for solutions together, rather than having a range of different organisations all having a go at the same issue and not necessarily making as much of an impact. And really a big driving force of this work is that community leads the change within their own communities. So that is, in a nutshell, what a place-based approach is. On this slide, I won't go through it, but these are just a very small collection of examples of different place-based approaches in Australia. I can't exactly tell you how many there are in the country because it is an interesting challenge to count them, but in the hundreds we're talking. And what this slide really represents is that they can take very different forms. So, for example, the top of the slide is Stronger Places, Stronger People. That's an initiative that's really coordinated by the Australian government and works with state and territory governments in 10 specific communities around the country to work together to essentially support local community to tackle specific challenges in those communities. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you might have, for example, the Greater Shepparton Lighthouse Project, which is a specific group of committed community leaders in Shepparton that have said, let's get together and let's really look at what we see are the biggest challenges facing people of Shepparton, and we'll tackle them. And one that I'm particularly fond of because it started in Doveton and is a great Victorian success story is Our Place. Essentially, Our Place is it's an education model which basically says a lot of people come into contact with like education sites in their communities. For example, if you've got kids, they're going to go to the local primary school. But what if you use that site as a hub for the needs of that entire family? So now these Our Place sites are incredible spaces that are incredibly welcoming and supportive for the entire family. So you might have a child in the primary school, you might have one of your younger children in a daycare centre on the same site. They can go to the maternal health nurse in the same space. And if one of the parents might be struggling to transition into work, there'll be adult education support and other kinds of support. And also it's a way for government services to be where people are. So, for example, there might be an office there where a particular service can sort of spend every Monday, so everyone knows how to find them. So that's a really wonderful example of how to sort of, use education as the centre of what will hopefully create support and help alleviate some really persistent social challenges. So in a nutshell, that's place-based approaches. So the organisation that I have recently joined, and in fact we have just registered, is very new, is called PLACE. And essentially what our goal is, we're a national level organisation And the goal of the organisation is to support the adoption and the impact of these place-based approaches. So it's both supporting people who are already doing this work, really trying to create the environment that means that that work is easier and that barriers that might be being faced across these different initiatives might be alleviated, but also supporting communities to start their own place-based initiatives. So essentially, that's kind of our goal is to provide, be somewhat of an intermediary between people doing community facing work and the government and all of these other key stakeholders that have a big stake in place-based work, to really support them to really build the ecosystem. A couple of key important parts of what we are an independent not-for-profit. We have a community leadership model. So in addition to our independent board of directors, we also will have a community council, which will have a really key role in driving our organisation's direction, which is really important. We are very committed to evidence. We want to really demonstrate the value of place-based initiatives and demonstrate what works so that those things can be replicated. And we are very keen to find ways to really enhance good work that is already being done. So if there's a community that's doing great work, we want to find a way that that can be shared with others so that they can really learn from that. So I'll just briefly touch on this, really, like to give a sense of sort of what our focus is. Entrenched socio-economic barriers, early years, employment support, and the transition to net zero with the First Nations focus across those 4 areas. We are funded by philanthropy and the federal government. That's really key. Our funding was announced in October last year by the Minister for Social Services, Amanda Rishworth, and the Treasurer, the Honourable Jim Chalmers. And we are delighted that we have secured funding for 5 years. And in that time, we hope to make place a very established part of the furniture that no one could ever imagine living without. So that's our goal over the next period. Essentially, I want to talk to you about what Place does, and this is where I want to dig into one of these functions that I would be very keen to hear from this group, particularly about how we might go about doing this. So essentially, there was a long consultation process that got us to this point. It was about 3 years in the making. People doing this work participated in a lot of conversations about what the challenges were and what an organisation like this could do. And these 4 functions really came out of those conversations. So the first one is enable. Essentially, this is about saying you need a particular skill set in the workforce to be able to do good place-based work. How do we identify where the gaps are, and how do we support a workforce to really skill up and also bring people in from other sectors to work in this space and do it well? And that's particularly an interesting challenge, thinking about the fact that what we want is a really skilled and capable workforce all over the country, metropolitan, regional, remote, very remote. Like, this is not just about saying, oh, we need to boost the skills of this across the country. We actually need those people all over the country. So that will be a big part of that, will be identifying those gaps and really coming up with a workforce strategy that hopefully will inform government and others who are in a position to really drive some of those changes, but also for us, it's about making sure that we're offering training and other sort of supports to build capability across the sector. The second one, learn and share. This is where our learning management system will come in. Essentially, we are confident there is an enormous amount of existing evidence to support this work, but it is not being necessarily extensively collated and shared in ways that is useful for the people who need it. We also think there's a lot of amazing work that could be captured as research. So there's also a piece about this, which is commissioning research. And crucially, what we know, particularly when people are spread out all across the country, we need a platform that people can access relevant, useful, functional material that is evidence-based when they need it. And that's where I think the opportunity for a really strong and accessible learning management system will be a big part of what we do. The third piece is called collaborative solutions. This is a very interesting one. This is where essentially we identify that across the sector there are consistent and persistent challenges. So if we get people into a room, we talk through what those challenges are, we workshop solutions, and then essentially seed fund people working on trying to actually test those solutions and hopefully resolve some of those issues. Now, that could be anything from identifying what a shared service model might look like for different place-based initiatives, or it might be to identify what the persistent challenges of engaging with government at a particular level continues to be, or it might be what are the challenges for cybersecurity, knowing that that is a really big and persistent issue for a lot of not-for-profits generally, but also especially in this community. The fourth one, and this is where I want to go into a little bit more detail, is called strengthen data. This is probably our most direct support function. And essentially what this came out of is that there is an enormous amount of good work being done around the country. And one particular example is there's a really fascinating organisation in Burt in New South Wales called Just Reinvest. And this came about from the local Indigenous community, who was extremely concerned about the rates of incarceration of their young people. And they approached government and said, we don't like how many of our young people are going into the criminal justice system, and we know you don't like it. We think that if you direct some of the funds that are currently going to locking up young people to us, we can get in front of this. And they did. They really did. They've really turned things around in that community. And that was done through local community leadership, really working together across the community to drive an outcome. So this is really put up on a pedestal as just a wonderful initiative that has had really great success. However, one of the persistent issues that the Just Reinvest organisation and community talks about is that they don't have access to data. Now, they know that an enormous amount of data is being collected about their community. Government particularly alone, just government alone, is collecting an enormous amount of data about their community. And when they go to the government and say, we need to know what you know about us so that we can make good decisions and make better decisions, and we can get in front of these issues that are persistent in our community. And the government says, absolutely, we absolutely want to do that too. We want to share that information, but we look at your data governance and we look at your data infrastructure, and there is no way we can share that data with you. It's just not safe. So we want to, but we can't. And these organisations are often very small, often very resource poor, doing an enormous amount of work with very limited resources. So one of the biggest issues they say is help us find a way to build the strength within our data infrastructure that we are then able to hold the data that helps us make good decisions about supporting our community. So really the goal of the strength and data function is to improve data governance and improve data capability. This just goes into a little bit more detail about that, essentially just repeating what I just said. The really interesting concern I think this speaks to as well is when we think about the availability, quality and security of data, that is, to my mind, in so many respects, a technology problem. And I think it also speaks to what is often the unmet need in a lot of these communities to have really good technology infrastructure. And I suspect that many of you in this meeting probably support your local community organisations with technology and know that that is really important to have even just someone who knows what they're doing to help build that infrastructure. And of course, there are so many communities and so many organisations around the country that don't necessarily have someone in their community that can help them with that work. So we are very keen to really provide that direct support to communities where we help them build that capability so that they can really elevate the work that they're doing with technology that to us is, I think, just second nature, that we've got it. And certainly, this organisation that we're building, I'm here in Melbourne, but the first thing we're thinking about is how do we build good technology infrastructure to meet the needs of our organisation. And I think it's just a real shame if all of the really challenging, persistent challenges that these organisations face, that technology is one of them, because I think it could so easily be overcome with the right support. So really what we want to do in this function is to provide that independent advice around data and making better decisions. We find also that in terms of providing commercial solutions this is a really challenging space. There are some commercial providers, but they're often very expensive and a bit patchy in terms of the quality. So we're also really keen to figure out, well, how do we provide this not as an expensive optional thing, but as the absolute basis, the base minimum needed to do this work well. And we're really committed to actually also increasing the capability of communities to do this work, because imagine the flow-on effect of even one or two people within a regional community being trained up to do this work well and to build and maintain the technology infrastructure of their organisation well. Imagine the flow-on effect of having that support in a community. And we really want to be able to help people feel empowered by access to data. And I think that's really key, to feel that with more knowledge comes better decision making. So in a nutshell, that is sort of a really big part of what we're going to be focusing on this year. Establishment is obviously really, we did start in September last year. We're currently a team of 3. We're hoping to be a team of 25 to 30 in about 8 months' time. So wish me luck. But really a big focus for us will be to do this data strengthening work. And I would be very interested to hear any insights that this group has, particularly in terms of how we might go about that, knowing that you are very familiar with that intersection between local community and technology. So this is us. Please feel free to come and find us. I am also going to hang around for some Q&A, so really look forward to chatting to you about that. Thank you so much. So another case study that is really highly regarded in terms of the impact that it's had, and it's probably one of the very first of these, is called Logan Together. I don't know, I'm super familiar with Queensland, to be honest. I am a very Victorian person, but Logan is an area on the outskirts of Brisbane. It's like many parts of the outskirts of capital cities, it experiences some significant disadvantage. And quite some time ago, members of the local community said, let's really put our heads together and figure this out. And what they did was create an organisation called Logan Together that channels both, coordinates, I guess, functionally coordinates what was an enormous amount of effort from a huge number of very committed people within that community that were struggling to get traction with really entrenched social issues. Logan Together, and Logan in general, is just a success story in many respects across the board in terms of what just coordinating effort has done in terms of responding to youth disadvantage, educational outcomes, health outcomes for that community. And it also has become a really great lightning rod for interest from philanthropy, from government. And I think that's a really key element too, is that oftentimes when communities get together and do the really hard work of actually working together, because as we know, that is quite challenging work, and finding commonalities within a local community can often, in some respects, be really easy, in some respects be really hard. When those communities come together and say, you know what, we've done the hard work, we've identified that these are the 5 issues that we need to address in the next 5 years, then, government and philanthropy really respond extremely well to that. And so Logan Together is a great example of how a struggling community really has turned an enormous amount around just by virtue of working together to identify those challenges and really become a lightning rod for that. Absolutely. And it's a really interesting thing, because I think at local government, place-based is a really a very popular approach right now. And I think in many respects you might say, well, don't these place-based approaches just sort of emulate local government anyway? But I think it just goes to show that I think we need multiple forms of collaborative work to really speak to the different challenges. And so I think local governments are really focusing on certain things, but one thing that we know, like you say, so I think everyone's been part of a consultation that felt very token, and what we're really keen to, I guess, get away from is anything that feels like that and is actually just genuine community leadership in those areas. Oh, well, I mean, in the short term, I would just say that AI certainly is assisting with the creation of this organisation. We are really drawing very heavily on tools to help us with a lot of really interesting parts of developing this organisation, which has actually been a lot of fun. Obviously, we are definitely in the phase of being quite tentative with that, but definitely we see there's a huge potential particularly where it comes to economies of scale, challenges around workforce in disparate areas. I mean, any opportunities, I think, where AI might be stepping in to provide some of that consistent automation would be, I think, seen as really hugely valuable. It's definitely something that is talked about in the space. Yeah, absolutely.
For years, I don't know if you know the background of this group, but part of our operation is to provide service to our members who have problems with their computers. And they're able to do it online. Doesn't matter where you are, you don't have to come to a central point or anything else. For years, I've believed that the MelbPC could set itself up as the RACV of computer users Australia-wide. And it seems to me that this organisation could provide a benefit to the country, particularly people in small country towns where they don't have access to expertise in that way. I don't know if that's the sort of area that your group could help in. It seems to be a little bit outside your sort of standard method of operation, but to me it seems to be something that would benefit from having some sort of support or assistance or promotion through a group like yours.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say it because Kirsten and I had a great chat about the background and the history of the PC users group. And when I was thinking about how the work that we're doing might resonate with the work that you're doing, there were two parts I thought. Work within local areas that you're in, I think, but I was also thinking exactly this. I think there's a huge potential in providing what we call a shared service model. And we've been thinking about that in a really, a more corporate way to say, okay, what would a shared service model look like whereby people pay for a subscription and then we provide them the IT service as well? There are plenty of commercial providers with that. And to be honest, like, they are good and they're expensive and they're outside the range of possibility for many local organisations. So I'm thinking through, well, how could we do something different? It occurs to me that the idea of channeling the existing skills and capabilities and interests of a group such as this one to, like you say, scale that so that it's available for people regardless of where they are, just seems to me to be an enormously exciting possibility. Yeah.
And for our club membership is $85 a year or thereabouts. People can make as many calls as they want. They use their cell phones or their internet across the country. It just seems to be like our club, whilst it's still going, is not what you'd call on fire at the present time for membership. And if we could get the right publicity, we could start providing that support to a lot of people all around the country for the cost of a phone call. Or if, as our cell phones are these days, your phone calls cost you nothing once you're organised. And anyway, just a thought.
Yeah,
and you're
amazing.
in a position to be able to think about it.
I will, definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a comment. Given the power is where the money is, how do you go with the funding and budgets of these various organisations and targeting that?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Richard. It's as if you work in our organisation and are thinking about the things that we are thinking about. So essentially, PLACE has come about because community has asked for it, but also because government wants it and philanthropy wants it. A lot of people in this space see the value of this work, and that is incredibly powerful. But goodwill is only part of the story. So while there is an enormous amount of support for this way of working, and there's an enormous amount of support for community-led approaches, it is also extremely challenging for a range of different organisations, but government just as one of them, particularly, if you might say, and a bit of a broad statement to say this, but essentially it is this is a new way of working and there are challenges to working in this way. So you're absolutely right. It is challenging, but what we're hoping is that if we've got the goodwill, that's the first point. And then the second point is to actually really drive the change that then enables this work. And if we can demonstrate that this style of working works, which a lot of people absolutely believe that and they can see that, but we can really drive the evidence to support that, then we're also confident that we can make a strong case for funding streams to continue to support this work. So that's a really big part of what we do.
Angela Stubbs on the chat. Sarah, is council data able to be shared with place data and vice versa with a level of governance and security? Local government is very risk averse.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question because I think in many respects, as a national centre, I guess there might be opportunities for us to engage with local councils and particularly, say, for example, local government associations and others to aggregate local data and maybe use existing census data and other things in ways that is useful. But I guess what we're talking about is even how do you get that next layer of local data. I think in many respects what we see as our role would be hopefully brokering those conversations, and also if there were barriers that were, so for example, if there had been conversations, of which I'm sure there are many, but if there had been conversations between like a significant place-based program and the local council that it was based in about data sharing and there were particular roadblocks, what we would be looking to do is support them to find the solutions to those roadblocks. Absolutely. This is very interesting, all of these data suggestions. This is fascinating. We're actually also, can I just point out that we've got a job in the market at the moment that's called Director Strengthening Data, and we are looking for a data specialist to come and lead our data strengthening function. So please, the data nerds in the group, please put your hands up for our new director role.
Any questions in the room? Yeah, Kirsten.
You said you could send people round to research places. Would you like to send someone round here to research us?
Yeah, well, so interestingly, the learn and share function is really our research function. It's really, the focus of that is both to commission research and to capture existing research and translate it and make it available for people. And so we are actually also looking for a director of Learn and Share, but we are really, really keen to be commissioning useful research, and ask any academic, a willing research partner is worth their weight in gold. So by all means, that would be a wonderful conversation to continue to have. And I know that, Kirsten, we talked a little bit about the possibilities around partnerships with Monash, and my background is I was with the University of Melbourne for many years, and universities are increasingly, I think, across the sector thinking about place-based. They understand that they need to really focus on the communities that they're in and their campuses. The physical campus is such an important part of who they are, and really being engaged with the local community is part of that. So we see university partnerships as a really big part of what we do, because we know they'll be very willing partners, very values aligned with us, but also see that they've got a huge contribution to make in the research space for us.
These days, what libraries are doing kind of overlaps what we're doing. And I think you mentioned earlier something about not duplicating things. And can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting to say that about libraries. So we actually, our office in the Vic Market is above the new library there. And it is amazing to see what is provided through a library these days. It is extraordinary. And I do think that libraries are, I think it would only be fair to call libraries a kind of place-based approach. So what we would probably see in terms of that would be really recognising that recognising, I guess, libraries and the library network, and I guess where libraries are now in terms of Australia and I mean, to my mind, they appear to be thriving. How that sits within a place-based sort of tapestry nationally, and how then we could work with that existing infrastructure to then perhaps drive other place-based approaches, or I guess bring libraries perhaps into other place-based initiatives. That's how we see it. And I can see, and we did have a really interesting chat, didn't we, about the sort of overlap between those spaces. But it occurs to me that there's an enormous amount of room for everybody to play a role in these kinds of initiatives. There are certainly gaps everywhere and an enormous amount of work to be done. But I'd like to think that libraries are also really well primed in terms of their goals and their values to collaborate with others to really drive good outcomes for their local communities.
Sarah, does party politics get involved in any of these collaborations?
Well, it is interesting you say that, and I'm conscious that we are being recorded, so I will be very diplomatic. But I will say this initiative, if I was to speak really frankly about its trajectory, it has over time had support from both of the major parties, and it's been driven forward at particular moments by both of the major parties, different times and in different ways. So in terms of party politics, we feel relatively, we feel relatively secure in the knowledge that place-based approaches seems to speak to everybody in some way or another. And so while maybe there might be discussions about some of the sort of the detail, broadly speaking, like both major parties have expressed a real interest in this way of working.
Can I ask, do you interact with government bodies like local councils, state government, federal government, but do you also pursue like local social organisations?
Yeah, I think you'd say that we would see our audience as government and community social organisations, but we would say that we are for community organisations. So in a way, we want to help government do this work better, but ultimately we want to do that to drive good outcomes for community. And of course, we don't decide what a good outcome looks like for a particular community, they do. So absolutely. And I would say, like, for example, in the few months that we've existed, we are building a pretty significant network of interested parties, and they're across the spectrum. They're coming from a range of different sectors, but like the first big thing that we're going to do, and we're doing this in a couple of, probably starting it next month, is a roadshow and listening tour around the country. And we are currently inviting expressions of interest from any local community. And we will be hitting the road and going and visiting people. And that focus there will be absolutely to talk to people in social organisations doing the work in those communities. Absolutely. That's really who we're for.
Can I also ask, with that in mind, this roadshow, I have a radio program on RPPFM. It's to do with amateur theatre and stuff on the peninsula. But I would like to interview, if you could make your way down to the studios in Mornington on a Monday morning around 11:15, I'd love to interview you and talk to you about this very thing on air.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there's some really great work happening in that area, knowing that it's definitely a high growth area too. Absolutely, that'd be wonderful.
Sarah, are you doing any research about what makes communities form and work? I remember playgroups, and what a good job the maternal and child health did of starting new parent groups, and they become like the such a strength of resource for everyone kind of facing parenthood at the same time. And then my experience with playgroups was that once you're in a playgroup, it was a bit hard to kind of step outside of it and advocate for what it needed.
Right.
And I wonder if maker spaces are a little bit like that essentially they kind of become a friendship group. So no one can kind of step outside and actually run a thing and advertise a thing, or say, oh, well, we're not advertising, that's why we don't have members, or we don't even know exactly what it is we're trying to sell. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting because I think because these place-based approaches, as we talk about them, occur all over the country and from everywhere from like capital cities to small towns, uh, the way that communities form and how they relate to one another is absolutely critical, the work. I would say in terms of a research interest, I think there is an enormous amount of really important work being done in that space, particularly, like you say, the playgroup example is a good one. I think there's an enormous recognition that early years is really critical, and there is huge investment across the country from government and philanthropy in early years and trying to drive good outcomes in the first 3 to 5 years. And I think there's an enormous amount of research being done in that space. I would say that what would be a wonderful kind of priority for us both to examine sort of the work that has been done and make sure that it's readily available for people and digestible in a way that is useful. And then where we see gaps, that's where we would commission to say, hey, we all have a hunch that this is a really important piece of work that needs to be done, but there's a gap here. We'll commission that piece of work. We'll find the right academic to drive that, or we'll find the right the researchers to do that work. But yes, I think these are very interesting questions, and definitely at the heart of this work is how communities form and relate to one another and must sustain those relationships over a very long time because, as we know, if you are committed to your local community, it's usually a very long-term commitment. So those relationships are often very long-standing ones.
Do you do anything with Volunteering Australia? I think they've done some sort of head work to try and think through how volunteering works. Principles like not overloading your volunteer, or they've got a stack of them. But have you done any looking at that?
They're definitely on our list of people that we're going to talk to and engage with, and absolutely. I mean, I think the how to channel the resources in these communities is really key, particularly if what we are asking of people is to provide community leadership. That's not a small task. That's quite a significant contribution, and to find ways to make sure that that's sustainable is really key. But yeah, absolutely, Volunteering Australia is a great organisation that we'll definitely be working with. Yeah.
I like this statement that Paul made just a few minutes ago, envisaging our club as being the RACV for computer science in Victoria, which makes a lot of sense to me because the focus of our club has very much been supporting our members, and a broader vision would be supporting the community. And I can read Steph Lancaster on the chat says, in response to member Paul Woodlard, Be Connected, government initiative, taps into 1,400 community learning centres across Australia, plus local libraries, U3A, etc., all offering support, helping community learn and use digital devices. Perhaps it's time Volunteer of the Month recipient 2024, Jeff Amor, gives a presentation on GM with other team members about MelbPC. Aim in doing this with general community and how we might lever on this from Paul's perspective, which could be a group discussion or opportunity to share thoughts, which I think is very much on the same.
Yeah, it seems like a really very interesting prospect to me, and knowing that there would be such huge appetite, and it seems again we are living in an absolutely wonderful time that these things can be scaled in ways that we previously weren't able to. So I think it's a wonderful idea, and we'd be really happy to support it.
Community sheds, are you doing anything with that? What's really intrigued me is there's a lot of scout halls, or especially girl guide halls near me in Cheltenham, that really don't look used. They're used less than we appear to be being used, and our rooms here are not very used at all, really. So, and yet, I don't know, a family member of mine says if there's a space for a cat in the universe, there'll be one there. And so if this kind of a place for a kind of make a spacey type, put it together type workshop, people will come to it. And yet it's not very, well, because they're sort of empty most of the time. Is it what's sort of in the situation where we have a crisis in housing, why is it that these spaces are empty most of the time? Is it that people can't get along together to sort of make rules about who's using what tool when, or I don't know. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, because I think, there is so much, there are so many examples, like, and Steph made that point, there are so many examples of just an enormous number of community-based organisations across the country that are channeling people's volunteer time to run these things. And it occurs to me that where place-based approaches these are all place-based approaches, absolutely. But if we think about where potentially a more coordinated effort might exist within that, and I'm not to say to supplant any of those initiatives, but for example, it occurs to me that there are probably a lot of people within local communities who may not necessarily feel that they have the capacity or the social connections to make use of these supports. And you think about even young people, how much support a young person in a school needs to really be kind of cajoled into trying new things and feeling comfortable to take steps into a new space. And I think the potential there to, say, really connect up organisations that might, for example, have a large group of people who are looking for opportunities to retrain if they're struggling with unemployment, and then the potential to connect those with organisations that are providing this kind of support. I know there are actually also some wonderful examples of that already going all over the place. But where we would see our role would probably be more speaking to what are the success stories that we see, what works, what others have done really successfully to drive positive impact, and really share that so that we could support people to do that work.
I was reading today about learning-based management systems being great for people that suffer attention issues, because it gives them the power to organise when they're learning and breaking things down into bite-sized pieces. And maybe in terms of getting the community sheds working, the jobs need to be bite-sized. We have a fabulous person here who brings a cake to Moorabbin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
A very bite-sized.
Yeah. And I mean, in any community, you'll find the group of people who seem to do everything, and they're exhausted and they're wondering when someone's going to come in and step into that role so that they can take a break. I mean, this is such a common experience, isn't it? And I love that idea of the bite-sized contributions. I think it's wonderful. Yeah.
That sounds like a good opening to introduce self-paced learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really that's the sky's the limit for us in terms of finding ways to meet the needs of this sector in terms of the training. And I think that's going to be a really creative and technically and, I guess, pedagogically creative challenge for us. Yeah.
This is from Sean Clark on the chats. Scout and guide halls are owned by the Scout and guide groups that built them. When these groups fold, unless there was an agreement with the local council, then the ownership goes back to Scouting Australia or Girl Guide Australia. These national groups often don't know what they own, which is why they are often vacant.
That is fascinating. Can you imagine that these buildings actually nobody knows that they're there? there's a lot of unmet potential there.
Yes, a lot of church buildings fit into the same category.
Absolutely, absolutely.
We're sort of coming out of the holiday season now. January was very, very slow, but things are starting slowly to move again. Now we're actually into February, second month of 2025. There is some stuff happening behind the scenes, and I mean, this evening's speaker is one of the things. Kirsten has been very active in seeking ways of collaborating with other organisations. I saw that the lady from the council was present earlier. I'm not sure if she stayed around. And we've also been talking to one or two other community type organisations, so that's all good. This is the sort of stuff that takes a while to produce any concrete results, but it's all good stuff. A little closer to home, I just had a chat with Mick Adams, and he has been lending out 3D printers to members, and he's got several in his little arsenal of loaners. At the moment, they're pretty much all spoken for, but if you're interested, please contact Mick and express your interest, and he will maybe recall from that person who's had it for 6 weeks or something like that, and give everyone a bit of a go. And you can always come in.
A scanner as well?
I beg your pardon?
Sorry, do we have access to a scanner as well?
We are in the process of deep contemplation about scanners, I assure you.
Thank you.
Yes, it's on our agenda for the next committee meeting, and you're one of several people who say, "Hey, a scanner would be really cool."
Thank you.
And, I guess I've hesitated a little bit, Barry, because I know there's a lot more to it than what you see on Star Trek.
Yes.
You can't just put something in there, push a button, and it magically comes out 3D printed. But particularly if we found, it would be great if we found a champion who would sort of say, yeah, look, I know about it, I'm prepared to do some hours and learn how to use it properly and use the software, etc. And you can get some, I know some quite, well, we saw those ones from the guys at Fashion 3D with their whole body scanner. We can't do that, but you can do good stuff with them too. So yeah, that sort of was the 3D printers, and we've had a couple of wins over the months of people sort of having little gadgets around their house that needed making or fixing or something, and there's frequently someone there on Wednesdays and nearly always on Saturdays, and you can always make an appointment beforehand if you've got a need for some not too complicated object. It could be as simple as a little drink holder to clip onto somebody's walking frame. Now, that sort of thing. Now, a big one here, we're trying to get the club rooms into a better degree of order, and wherever we go, we find stuff that has been left by individuals or by SIGs over the years, and there's probably enough to fill a skip bin of abandoned, semi-abandoned, or certainly no longer loved stuffs. And we are going to have a spring cleaning. I mentioned this in the What's On newsletter, which I would beseech everyone to please glance at when you receive it. So well, let me put it this way, anything that's still there on the 31st of March, unless some arrangement has been made with the office to put it aside, is likely to just be thrown out or sold or something. There's accumulation there from many years, decades of stuff. So we need to clean that out before we can start repurposing some of the space. Next one, the CNC project is still going very well. That's been a big winner. I'm happily surprised about that. This actually has brought, I'm not sure the number, Mick, 2 or 3 new members, or Rob, if you're there, into the club, just by coming in and seeing what we're up to. So that's very successful. The last thing I want to mention is that on Monday we again have David Evans' potluck picks, or as David would say, potluck packs. Sorry, Dave. And that's a really lovely little thing. We just sit down in a casual environment, make a cup of tea or coffee, and share some little story. So probably on Monday, if I get there, I might share a bit more of my story of using AIs for generating program code, or how I managed to fool one of the AIs into the Chinese AI into saying something detrimental about the Chinese government, or whatever it is. Other people have come up with all sorts of things, just something of general interest. So it's really just a little social thing. That's potluck picks on Mondays. It's in the calendar. And finally, just very, very briefly, mixed child Elliot wants to start a podcast about movies, and we're in the process of building up a podcast studio facility. So if anyone would like to be a part of a podcast about movies, look in your What's On newsletter, and you'll get Elliot's phone number or other contact details. You can contact her. That's it. That's it for me. Gee, that was quick. Not hearing you, Barry.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of the committee for all the work you do. We take it all for granted, but someone's got to do it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a presentation from Keith Gledhill. Keith, are you there?
I am, yes.
Oh, good on you, mate. Keith's a retired maths, IT and music teacher from both primary and secondary schools. That's a pretty broad remit, isn't it? Going from...
I'm also a retired TAFE teacher for 30 years for computer engineering and networking.
You're a man for all seasons.
Yeah, master of none.
On my brief says, after 25 years as a computer engineering trainer for TAFE and Cisco Systems, Keith will present on learning management systems such as Excel Learning and LearnPress. Both things I know nothing about, so I'm very much looking forward to hearing you. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah, no worries. As was pointed out, I developed an interest in learning management systems, and the first one I tried was one called EXE Learning, and it's a standalone teaching device where you create your course with the program, and then you can download it to a USB stick and take it anywhere and just plug it in, and away it goes. I did that on a Linux machine because that was the only spare laptop I had at the time, and I didn't want to use my Windows laptop. So anyway, then I discovered, I mean, I've used WordPress before and things like Moodle and Joomla and all those. I've tried all those, but WordPress was the only one that I successfully got operating on a Raspberry Pi. So what I've done is I've set up my own little network here, so that I can, on my Raspberry Pi, I can log into it and run these programs. But I'll give you, if I can share my screen, and I'll show you what it is. So basically, and share. Okay, so if you look at that, that's just a quick mock-up I made of what I call Keith's College of Smarts, and I've generated a few courses. So this is what a student would see when they logged onto in my case, my Raspberry Pi. And here you can see all courses, and then it comes to a page like this, and you can see I've done here the Clubhouse audio visual equipment, because I ran a training session here at the over 55s village that we live in. And a lot of people were confused about how to set up the AV gear in the clubhouse. So I made this course, and you can see here it shows you the duration. It's suitable for a beginner. I've only got 3 lessons in there at the moment, 0 quizzes, and there was 3 students logged in. But when I did it at the clubhouse, there was about 6 or 7. This course is designed for those who don't know or are unsure of how to operate the AV system. And you can see here it says free. You can also charge for them, and the whole thing takes care of billing the person, collecting the money and issuing receipts and all that sort of stuff, and then enrolling them in the course. I've also got here one called Guitar 101, where this course is for students who have had no training in playing the guitar. Again, that's free. This one here, Music 101, you can see it goes for 10 weeks, all levels. I haven't put any lessons in there because this is just a demo thing. But this one here I have set up with a quiz and 5 lessons, and it's create a simple web page. And again, it's free. So if we go here to read more, you can see it comes to this place here, right? You can see an overview. This course will show beginners the basic HTML code to create a simple web page. Then you go here to the curriculum, and you can see these, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lessons, basic HTML, then a quiz, HTML tags, centering the text and the line dividers, improving the appearance, adding pictures to your page, etc., etc., etc. So, and of course here you can see it says, if there was a price for it, it would show there where that free is, and then this would say, go to checkout or something similar to that. But because it's free, it just goes start now. You go to start now. See, that's the checkout, the check-in screen, and it's asking me to log in. So we place order. It's all free. I'll what shall I use? Joe logs. Password 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and place order. Oh, yeah, you have to register it. But hang on, what I'll do is I'll go back and I will log in. I don't profess to be an expert at this. I'm just passing on what I've learned. So anyway, that's basically, so you can become a teacher, blah, 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 blah. Check out, this is where you pay for your course. Yeah, you sign in. Let's see if I can do it on mine. Right, see this item is create a simple web page. Then we go to here, and now we can start, oh sorry, we go continue. Right, and this is where you have your learning material. And we're not going to waste our time going through it, but then you'll see that there is a, you can go back here, because we've basically done that, blah, 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 blah. We go on to the next one. And this is just to give you an idea. It's 5 questions, duration 10 minutes, passing grade 80%. So which of these is a correct HTML tag? Well, it's obviously that one, isn't it? No, it's not. It's none of those, but never mind. What will display on the content part of the page that has the following code? Well, nothing, because there's no HTML tags. So nothing will appear on the page. Which of the following tags will center the text on the screen? And there's a couple of answers missing. I've got to fix that. But the correct answer would be greater than, center, smaller than. And the questions, as I say, I've just been mucking around with this, so I'd make sure that was all sorted before I sort of went public with it. Yeah, 20%, so I failed, because some of the answers weren't there. But that's a technical problem. And then, of course, you've got HTML tags, and it tells you all about the HTML tags, centering the text and the dividers. And again, here is where you see the center tag. Where have I put it? Yeah, there, see? Center and a closing tag, yeah. And, of course, the rest of it is just, you know, basic HTML. Now, how you set this up, that's the end result, Okay, now you can put that on a server and people can log into it and just do it at their own pace. So let's go, I'll switch over to the other web browser I had and log in again. And here we have you're all familiar with this WordPress login screen, yeah? Yeah, if you don't, it's a really good program, WordPress. And LearnPress here, which is this one here, is just a plugin for WordPress. All you do is download the plugin, activate it, and away you go. Now, when you press LearnPress, you can see you've got courses, right? This shows all the courses you've created, students enrolled, the price, the author, and so on and so on. The one here that says lessons, oh, sorry, you can go, let's go back to that one for a minute. If you want to add a course, you just add new course, right? And then it prompts you for a name for the course, right? You add a title up here for the name of the course, and here you put all your text and drawings and so forth and diagrams. For example, for my Music 101, I've got the treble clef and the bass clef and all the notes labeled as you need them. So anyway, moving on to, once you've created the course, you come back and you create your lessons. Okay, now you'll notice that essentially you can create all your lessons in one go for different courses, because you can see here that that one is for create a simple web page. This one here, how the system is set up, is for the Clubhouse audio visual equipment. HTML tags, create a simple web page. This one here, overview, I haven't assigned to a course yet, so it doesn't label it there. So going back, that's how we set up the lessons, right? So you give it a name, and when you're in courses, I think also too, like if we pick this one, for example, see down here you can have, this is the pricing, okay? So if you click on that and you want to put a regular price of $10.99, right? A sale price of $8. You don't have to worry about all the rest of it, and then you just come down, and once you've done that, when you save the settings down the bottom, it automatically sets everything up for you. So let's go down to, just before we leave that, here is where you can create your lessons also. You know, create a new lesson, right? Create a new lesson. And these are all the lessons that I had planned for it. And then when you come down here, you can allow comments or you can disallow comments. If you want the students to be able to set a comment for it, you do that here. Word page scripts we won't worry about for now. And then you come back up to the top, and where it says over here, just let me get rid of this thing, preview changes, but importantly, you go to here to update. Okay, you update it. Then if we go back to our home page, sorry, done the wrong thing. Here, we go back to here and go all courses. Right, you can see this now has the price there, $8.88. And of course, if someone goes read more, they go to the page where that shows them, they can look at the curriculum, decide whether they want to pay for it or not, and then they go through the process of paying for it. So getting back to our screen here, so that's how we set up lessons. Quizzes is just as easy. Right, you decide which, or if you want to add a new quiz, here's one that's in draft process, so I'll have a look at that. All right, new quiz. Now down here is where you can add your questions. You put the question there, and then down here is where you put your answers. Right, and you can also up here, hang on, where did I find it? Select items. No, that wasn't it. There's one up here where you can, here we are, single choice. You can either single choice, true or false. true or false, multi-choice, single choice, or fill in the blank. You see, multi-choice gives you the first option, second option, third, add as many as you like, and just put a tick in the one that's the correct one. That's all you have to do. You can put a hint in here if you want, an explanation, right? So when they get it right, you put in, brilliant, well done, great work, etc., etc., etc. All right, and then here's where you create new questions. Passing grade, duration, 10 minutes, negative marking, the rest is all pretty self-explanatory. You can allow them to retake the test, set 0 to disable it, which means they can do it. Or if you want them to be able to do it infinite number of times, you change that to a 1. All right, so 0 to disable, 1 to infinite. So if you have that on as a 0, they won't be able to retake it. If you have it as a 1, they'll be able to take it as many times as they want. And you can also change the number of questions per page, 2, 3, 4, 5, whichever you want. You can allow students to review this quiz after they finish the quiz. If you want them to be able to see what ones they got wrong, you can show the correct answer and whatever you like. Word WP code page scripts we won't go into because I haven't really had a good look at that yet. And you can also set up a question bank. Right, you can put all your questions in here, their types, and which course, or lesson that they're attached to. So you can do it all. You can do it all through that. Orders. This is where you get a list of people that have paid, and this is all the people that have logged on and had a go at these things. And you can see some are completed. This person here, Joe Bloggs, who's fictional, he's pending because he hasn't paid his $5.95 yet, mainly because he doesn't exist. And categories we won't go into because it's fairly complicated. You can have different categories for different courses, but I haven't really fiddled with that yet. And tags, statistics are how many people have bought your courses, how many people have done them, and that's today, last 12 months, right? So it'd be 9 total orders, 5 courses, 1 instructor, total of 2 students. But again, that's all fictional information. Add-ons, you can have add-ons for it. And here you can see you've got to check out for add-on, LearnPress, announcements, assignments, LearnPress net payments, BBB Press, a bulletin board, Buddy Press, certificate. You can create certificates. Some of these are paid. Some of them are you need to pay. Others are free. We'll see. We'll find a free one. Free on ThinPress. A coming soon add-on. And of course, there's some documentation there as well. And you can see there's a whole heap of add-ons that you can have, like course review, front-end editor, and etc., etc., etc. And you just need to go through those, and if you see something you're interested in, add it on and have a go at it. Okay, you can have different themes for your home page. And hang on, why isn't it going? Come on, go, 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 go. Still doing something. Right, so you can have all sorts of different themes, and if you're clever enough, you can create your own theme, whichever you want. And that one where I have the bird flying along, that's one of these, which I figured was the closest thing to what we want, but I can't find it now, but it'll be there somewhere. And then you can change all your settings if you want. All courses, create new, instructor page, single instructor, and so forth and so forth, just like you would a normal, but like a WordPress account. And some tools. You can install sample data if you want to experiment with it. Reset course progress. So if a student complains that they weren't fairly treated in the quiz and you want to let them have another go, you can reset the course progress and they can start again. Or reset, sorry, that would be reset user program, reset item progress. Okay, and essentially that's basically LearnPress, and you know it's free of charge to download. If you want some interesting things, then you need to you need to pay for them, but they're not that expensive, about 30, 40 bucks or something, and you've got the plug-in you want. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to, I'll unshare my screen. Anyway, and of course, as I say, Xlearn is basically the same, similar setup. So that was my presentation. Any questions?
On the introducing you, I said that you were retired.
Yeah.
What are you doing with all this? Sounds like retirement.
Well, my wife complains that I have got far too many hobbies. So I'm busy indulging in all those hobbies. As I said before, I've got a radio show on RPPFM. I'll give it a plug. It's called Parts, Peninsula and Regional Theatre Scene, and it's on 98.7, Monday mornings, 11 till 12. So if you're bored and got nothing else to do, have a listen in. I play all the old musical theatre songs and everything, and interview people from amateur theatre.
Good on you, Keith. Look, thanks very much for coming and sharing all that with us. Really appreciate it.
Happy to.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Moving on, Harry.
I have a topic for you, which is how Microsoft has recently been annoying many, many users. And I've got three components, one of which has been around for some time, except the deadline is now looming closer because it's in October of this year. The second one has to do with the pricing change in subscriptions for its main Office suite, which is called Microsoft 365, like everything else is these days. So this is the one with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. that you put on your desktop, which is a subscription service. And finally, last but not least in terms of annoyance, is the introduction of new Outlook and the perception that many have that's being forced on them. So I've put most of what I might have said in links in the comments, okay? So, and I put them there, you can scroll them up and down. I don't know how easy it is for you to download them, but there they are. Very briefly then. So this has been coming for some years. Microsoft has set a hardware standard for Windows 11 that computers younger than 2015 or 2018 in terms of processor manufacturer, depending whether you're on Intel or AMD, only those support this feature, which in brief is called TPM2. And there is a serious reason for wanting that to work, because apparently it has security considerations. And some of the security features will not work on computers that lack them. And so when you, on your Windows 10 computer, cheerfully ask for an update these days, you may possibly get an unwelcoming message saying your computer is not able to support Windows 11. Now, there are two things you can do about it without completely leaving Windows, which a good many people in the room will immediately point out is the obvious solution. Go to Linux, or even possibly a Chromebook if you have to buy a new computer. One of them is that, at least in the short term, Microsoft is offering something called an extended support program. So for a sum of money, it will guarantee security only support. So you see the word security in the URL there, for people using Windows 10. The price, I thought it was $30, but I looked it up a couple of days ago and it's $61 US in year one, and that doubles every year. It's not limited to 1 year, but it gets bigger every year. So even private citizens can use that. And you can read about it on the security updates thing. So here are the two things that Microsoft or its actual programmers offer as a way around where you can either A, continue to use Windows 10 at a price, or bypass the Windows 11 requirements. I did that with my 2012 desktop, and Windows 11 worked fine, apart from one annoying feature that I believe isn't necessarily imposed on you if you do that. So There we go. I suspect most people in the room are already familiar with that one. Next one is the price rise, which came as a bit of a shock, I think, because it only emerged a couple of months ago. And I think it actually, the actual cutoff date is somewhere at the end of this month, I think. So if you are a subscriber to Microsoft 365, what's happened to the Office suite now, and you do nothing about it and you're automatically renewing and you're not been in the market getting cheaper ones, because you can stack cheaper ones up to 5 years. And I've stacked mine for several years already. You find that suddenly the price has gone up by 30%, I think it is. Because what's happened is that Microsoft has decided you really want to use Copilot, that's AI tool, and you get some Copilot privileges in the bundle. But it's also supporting not accepting the price rise. And this is straight Microsoft. This isn't a backdoor at all. It's just that you might not find out about it unless you got the hint, because the increase in price is otherwise automatic for you. So I put there ways to avoid. There's Microsoft's post about the subscription rise, and then in Microsoft support, you can see how you can downgrade your subscription to what they call in Classic. What you've been paying for before this is now being called Classic. That probably rings a bell when we get to the next topic, which is Outlook. Okay, so I did that with my own, although I'm paid through to 2028, I think, at the moment, something like that. But then they've downgraded my subscription from the one with Copilot to Classic. So if it were to happen that I didn't manage to anticipate that payment and get something a bit cheaper for it, I still wouldn't be paying the extra 30%. Finally then, and so first one affects everybody who's got Windows 10. It doesn't, if you don't upgrade to Windows 11 by October, the threat is that your Windows will not get full security updates. If you read the Microsoft statement, which I think is its most recent I've given you, they're slightly fudging whether you won't get security updates. And you and I can speculate why they might be doing that. It's not hard to think of why. Because there'll be millions of computers on the planet still using Windows 10, with or without TPM, okay? So the final thing is about the, many of us who've been around email with Microsoft for many years recognize that it likes to call anything that does email Outlook, right? So the word Outlook works very hard for Microsoft. There are even people here young enough to remember Outlook Express. So by now, Outlook is, of course, the name of the email on the web, which is outlook.com. It's still the name of the old bellwether Microsoft program, sorry, email program called Outlook. But now you have to call that Classic Outlook because they've introduced New Outlook. New Outlook is being pushed at users, but it's not being forced on them yet. Organizations and individuals can hold off if they want to, according to Microsoft, until 2029. And that's a good thing because there's no question that the new Outlook is vastly inferior to Classic Outlook in its features. It's also, this is one thing I'd like to get in because you can read, I've given you the link so you can do your homework if you want to. Or make 2 points perhaps. The point is how this affects you depends how committed you already are to whichever Microsoft email program. If, like many Melbourne PC users, you're using Thunderbird anyway, you're completely free of contamination by this particular one, okay? Just as if you're using one of the other Office packages, you're completely free of contamination by the rise in price I've been talking about. But yes, there's Keith Gledhill who's kindly underlined what I just said. This affects people using classic Outlook only to the extent that they could find in 2029 that they're still being sold a puppy instead of their current program. I think that's rather unlikely to happen. The people who are more directly affected, I think, are those who've been using the built-in mail programs that started, I think, at the end of Windows 8. There was a period when Microsoft didn't have a built-in mail program. And then we got Mail, which was carried forward to Windows 10. And Mail users are pretty much being migrated into New Outlook, and it is actually better than Mail, but that's not saying very much. The other thing I want to mention to you in the fading as the sun sets on the recording is that New Outlook is a very odd beast in terms of the way it manages your accounts. I don't know enough to claim it's unique, but what happens with New Outlook, and you find this out when you install your accounts, because you're interrogated about sharing your data with Microsoft in a way you're not used to. New Outlook works all very like you using a browser with one tab for each email account, right? So in a single browser, you can go to the webmail for Microsoft, the webmail for Google, the webmail for Big Pond, whatever you do, and just switch between the tabs, okay? So all your browser is doing is interacting with those servers. Now, the way Microsoft has set it up, you're interacting with the Microsoft servers all the time, which is quite different from classic Outlook and Thunderbird, right? Because you're just going directly to the servers of that particular email service. And Microsoft has interposed its servers between you and the remote servers. So it's a little bit like having that browser, but it's all Microsoft. So one aspect of that is that you have to share your login, all your login details with Microsoft, which I think is a serious breach of privacy myself. But also, if you read some of the less than enthusiastic comments that I have linked, and you can find a great many more. I did have it there, but then I found the Windows Central one. So I just left you there with somebody who hates it. But r/Outlook in Reddit contains some unbridledly rude remarks about New Outlook. So you need to be careful about your language. But a lot of people are very upset about the New Outlook. And a lot of them wrongly believe it's being fully enforced immediately. It's something much subtler than that that's going on, but they are pushing it. So the alternative has already been mentioned. Look, if you're already paying the King's shilling for Microsoft 365, you're there till 2029 anyway with Outlook. That's in the picture. If you're using Thunderbird, you're absolutely fine. Doesn't affect you anyway. The people kind of caught in the middle are those who might be happily using either Mail or New Outlook. But on the whole, I think if they're happy enough with that Mail program, they'll be happy enough with New Outlook, which incidentally has an almost identical user interface to Outlook.com. The way to tell which one you're looking at, and I did circulate this in iHelp a couple of weeks ago, is to look at the top left of the screen. If it says Outlook there, you're on the web. If it doesn't say Outlook there, you're using the local program. So the interface is very similar, and even the mountain graphic that you see on the blank page is identical. So that's all I have to say. We are now over time anyway. I'll be perfectly happy to stay and chat with who wants to stay. Until I'm told we're going to switch it off, does anyone want to ask any questions?
Harry, Paul Woolard, I just want to mention, if anybody's still wants to continue with Outlook, last week I purchased 3 copies of Classic Outlook for $39.95. So that works out at $13.33 each copy. Can use it on 3 different machines. I mentioned it to a number of other members, and they went and had a look at the same web page and purchased something better. I didn't see, I just wanted Outlook. But they purchased a copy of Windows 11 and a copy of Outlook, Office 2024,
Yes.
for 3 copies of each for the same $39. So they got theirs for $6.33.
Okay.
Now,
Okay. Two things. Put the link up there immediately, please. Right.
I haven't got it at my hand at the moment, but I will.